Hello, we're going to take a look at Chapter 9, which is about human resource management and diversity. Now, human resources has come a long way over the past few decades. It used to be that HR was more about the holiday parties, insurance, and not much more beyond that. And that's changed dramatically. And part of that change occurred in 1981 with Jack Welch, who was CEO of GE from 1981 to 2001. In fact, he was known as CEO of the century. And he advocated that the head of HR deserves a spot at the strategic table along with the CIO, CFO, etc. And so with that advocation, we've seen a more of an elevation in HR and a role of HR in businesses. And so you can see here in terms of HR management, it's getting the right people, trying to find places to find so recruiting fairs in colleges, or maybe taking care of things on LinkedIn, whatever the case may be. So they do a lot more for organizations than just holiday parties now. One of the things they work with is affirmative action. Now, what affirmative action does, it makes sure that protected groups are treated fairly. So minorities, for example, women in business, that they are treated fairly. Now, what this does is takes away a little bit of authority from the business management, but the flip side of that is that more groups are treated fairly. So in regards to identifying employees, many of you have done through this before, no matter your age. And so let's just talk briefly about this process. So employee planning, that's, you work with the managers, HR people work with the managers and say, okay, this is what we're looking for. These are our skill sets. And the HR people will take it from there. Now, we're going to talk about recruitment and downsizing. Unfortunately, there's a downsizing aspect to HR, and we're going to talk about that. And in the selection process. Now, a lot of applications are now being screened electronically with AI, and so we have to make sure we get the right buzzwords in there. So HR is just trying to work with the managers to make sure that the right words are in there, and so they're filtering out other candidates. One advice I can give to you, and this is a little off topic here for the lecture, but if you get the opportunity to find out who the hiring manager is, and if you can bypass HR and find out who that person is, that would be spectacular. That'd be a break for you. Because typically what happens, and I've experienced this too, and that's why I'm telling you to do this, because this is what I used to do, is that if you find out who that person is and you don't go through HR, they kind of know more than just the scratching of the surface, like what HR is going to know, because they're going to hear just what the manager wants. But they might know terms that is not in the criteria for hiring, experiences that you have that maybe wasn't included in the job description. So I strongly suggest that you try to find out who the hiring manager is. I can tell you when I try to find teaching jobs that I do not go through HR. I try to find who the chair is, I try to find who the dean is, and then reach out to them. It works, trust me. All right, now job analysis. This is something I did at the newspaper years and years ago. And what this does is you basically sit and you watch the person work. And you write down, it's very meticulous. You write down what they're doing, how they do it, how long it takes. Now, what you can build off this is a job description so that if the person that leaves and you need a job description, you have it. And it's more than just one paragraph of here's what you do. It's broken down so that if their interview questions happen, you have something there. You have to find the right person. Now, we've talked about this before in terms of people. What's more important? Hiring for the culture or hiring for the position? Again, do you want the person that that's a limited skill set but terrific in the culture? Or do you want the person who's got the superior skill set and doesn't fit into the culture? I lean more toward the former, but some people lean toward the latter. So our first key word for this chapter is going to be job analysis. Now, unfortunately, there's going to be layoffs. You want to treat people with respect and give them their dignity because you're basically making their life really difficult. Now, there's a couple things involved in this. If it is a termination for cause, say fighting, they're not doing their job properly, they're embezzling, harassment. Okay, that's one thing. If it's a layoff, if they're a really good person and they've tried and tried and tried, but it's just not working out, okay, you may have to let them go. This this process again, you want them to preserve their dignity. Um, they've tried, and the layoffs may not be any fault of theirs. If they tried and tried and it doesn't work out, okay, you may want to look in the mirror too, because maybe they were put in the wrong position by the management team. That's I've seen that before too. And what I've also seen in along those regards is that these people have great skill sets. They're great people, but they just weren't a fit in the position. So the manager's like, "Oh, this person's dumb." Um, I've heard managers call the people stupid and behind their back, of course. And it's not the person's fault. They were hired for that wrong position. So the manager needs to look themselves in the mirror. So I another thing I really stress besides the culture and the job skill sets is if you get a person who's a really good employee and a good person wants to work hard, shows up all the time, has the company's best interest at heart, give them the opportunities, give them second and third chances. If necessary, move them to a different department, because what you're going to find as a future manager is that good people are really hard to find. Now, it might be a little bit easier now if AI comes along and takes some of the entry level positions and we have more of a glut of people to choose from, then you might be able to choose more people and maybe get that really good person. But if not, just keep in mind, really good people are harder to find. So interviewing, this is going to be our second keyword is interviewing. And when interviewing a person, obviously you'll have a set of questions in front of you. And I've been in interviews before where it's been recorded and each person around the table asks one question, but they won't ask any follow-up questions. That was the interview. I think you should ask follow-up questions, because how do you know if you don't, if how do you get to know a person more if you don't have the follow-up questions? Now, I understand why they did it, because they wanted to be fair to everyone. I get that. Um, but I also know from my experiences from being the interviewer and interviewee, you want to have that chance to either the person speaking, the interviewee, to to show and demonstrate your skill sets, but also from the person doing interviewing, can they fit the culture? Can they do the job? What experiences can they bring? What can they do to make us a stronger team? So that's why in like step two, prepare to step the questions. Absolutely. Um, in regards to asking the questions and listening, active listening is important. That leaning in, maybe taking a note or two, nodding the head, it makes a big difference. And keep engaged with that person, because if you just look off like this and they're talking, you're also being interviewed too. I mean, a person who's wanting a job wants to work at a company, but if you treat them like this during the interview process, what is it going to be like once they're hired? So you have to remember that as well. And so, in the interview process, again, be fair, pay attention, communicate, ask questions. And then retaining good people. This could be a good work environment, the good culture, the innovation that we talked about a few chapters ago, the organic structure. So give a person a reason to want to be at the facility or in the organization. And one of the things that HR does is try to help create that environment, whether it be music in the background, the lighting that's used, the color on the walls. Make something inviting so that people want to be there and they don't dread coming to work every day. So that's part of that retention. Now, in regards to retaining competent employees, I some of this that you see here, I never experienced. Okay, so like, um, in terms of written essay, I've never had to do anything like that. Management MBOs, management by objectives, I've seen that. I'm not a big fan of it. I think it sterilizes. I think it sterilizes the employee. So the way that I would retain a competent employee again is talk to them, show them that they're important, compliment their work, Find out their motivation. Are they intrinsic or extrinsic? You're going to find out that most people are intrinsically motivated, and we're going to talk about that later on in the course. But this is one of the things that, it's going to be a challenge because keeping good people is paramount. And remember something, this is something that Welsh talked about in a video I saw of his, is that 1 star is worth 4 regular people. So if you get that one really rock star, you hug them, you tell them how much you appreciate them. Now, unfortunately, we got downsizing, and this is going to be our third keyword, which is downsizing. And as we do with firing when people go, we have to keep their dignity. And I've been through downsizing before. It's hard. You look yourself in the mirror and you're like, your self-worth is like, why me? And but you kind of understand. Like, I was a print estimator at a printing facility in Milwaukee, and the ownership tried. I mean, I saw where they cut profits. They did cut out parties. They were trying everything they could to keep people employed. And unfortunately, it just didn't happen. And so some people got let go. I was one of them. And I remember going into that office, and there was my manager, there was an HR person, and there was one other person in there. And I'm like, oh, this is it. And my first expression to them was, what took you so long? Because I knew what the numbers were. And, looking back at it, probably shouldn't have said that, but that's just the way I felt. But I knew they tried. I've seen other organizations that have let people go. Now, I was a survivor, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but they didn't do that. They were just like, cut, 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 cut. And those organizations aren't really around anymore. The ones that cut, 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 because they focus more on money rather than people. The facility in Milwaukee is still around. The one that really cared about its people, the one that I worked at in Illinois that just cut, 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 they're out of business. And so I don't know if there's a true correlation or not, but I think there is. All right. So anyway, when there's a downsizing, yes, communicate with them, tell them what it is. It's not their fault. It's just down the economy. And most people are going to know. The impact of the layoff, it could be permanent. It could be weekly. But be upfront with them, because you're dealing with their lives. It's not just your organization. You got these lives now. If necessary, be available to them. Some people may want to come back and say, hey, can you help me with a resume? Can I use you as a reference? Can I talk to you about something? Be open with them, because it wasn't their fault that they're leaving. And you might be the only resource that they have. So I just want to emphasize that. Adapting to a changing workplace. We're seeing more and more where work-life balance is more important. And we talked about this a few chapters ago about, you had the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, Gen Ys, and Zs. The baby boomers, they worked and they came home. Gen Xers, they wanted the real world, worked forever. I'm a Gen Xer. I did some stuff I'm ashamed of. Like, for example, when my son was born, he had bad lungs, and he was in NICU for a week. I never went and saw him. I was too busy working. I was working in a printing facility in Woodstock, and then I went and taught a class at night. I never went and saw him. And I am so ashamed of that. If that was today, it'd be totally different. I'd be there and, we'd do something different with the class and work. So make the priorities, okay? And I think most people in the workplace will accommodate you, but make sure you have that work-life balance program. Smile, laugh, make sure you're active, okay? Because life's short and you don't want to waste it all working. So as we wrap up this chapter, I just want to talk about inclusion, HR management, and we started this chapter talking about diversity and affirmative action, and that ties into this too. So as we look at the training, at all the functions, we've talked about training, we've talked about performance management, but also trying to get those individuals from different backgrounds and include, and then inclusion. And what it does, it expands the thought process, it expands ideas. So not just having the same people from the same background, have a diverse group of people. And I think you'll find that the organization will be much more successful. Well, that's my discussion for chapter 9. And I'm sorry you got 15 minutes, a little bit longer than anticipated. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions whatsoever, please reach out and I will see you in chapter 10. Have a great day.